Well, welcome back to the Jam Pack podcast. We've had a very long week break off, and we've recruited one more member. So
Hello.
say hello, Shaun.
Hello. How are we?
All good.
Well, in this time off, I think I've sort of got you guys to sort of think introspectively on music theory, and sort of come up with the question of what makes a perfect album. And so I just thought I'd give you guys that question and we can just delve into it and have a nice conversation here in quarantine.
Yeah, we've had a long week to think about it.
Exactly.
A solid 4 months, is it now? 5? No, it's more than that.
It's more than that. I think the last one we did was like August, September.
Yeah.
Before all of this. But to introduce my thought process, I think it was just a meme, and it was like it was the Daughters album that Fantano gave a 10, and it was like it was that meme where it was like, no, you can't just think that this album's this. It's really detailed introspective on like how dark and dreary the world is, or something like that. And then I was like, oh, right, okay. And then I saw a video by Brad Taste of Music where he was ranking all the songs from To Be Kind. And I just sort of saw like comparisons between the two and like the way the guy described it and the way Brad Taste was describing all the Swan songs. And I just thought that like all of Fantano's albums that he gave a 10 just sort of correlate on like the same sort of levels. And I was like, so what formula makes a perfect album in that sense?
I think
that makes any sense.
The Baby. That's it.
Lil Xan Betrayed.
Yes.
Is that what is Lil Xan? Is that what the album's called?
Yeah,
that's the one. Total
Oh God.
Replay it. Yeah, I think a lot of like classic albums sort of have that thing about them where it's like you can't just listen to it while you're doing something, and if you do, you're just going to miss out on everything. If you I
think it can kind of be a bit of like, it can kind of be a negative point if you kind of really like it straight away. Like, I mean, that's a good thing if you're hooked right off the bat, but I feel if you've absorbed everything that the album's kind of trying to give on your first listen, I don't know, I think that can be kind of a negative point because you haven't, not because of you, but like because there's not much in the album, there's not too much substance with it or anything. Yeah. I think if something takes a couple of tries to get into or to fully appreciate, that's more of a sign of a bit more like substance to the actual album, I suppose.
To add on to that point, my favourite album that we did in the first episode that still is my favourite album, Atrocity Exhibition by Danny Brown. I did not like it at first.
Yeah, I thought
I mean, neither.
Did not like it at all. And then the more that I just tried to get into it, the more that things clicked, and then it just amalgamated into a piece that becomes perfect, while at first it seems to you as being imperfect. And I think that kind of what makes a perfect album as well.
I think that was one thing that I sort of thought as well, because again, like with the first episode we did, my favourite album of all time is To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. And I think I was thinking about like, do tracks by themselves matter when it comes to a perfect album? Because I think if I'm making a playlist right now, I'm not really going to put any songs from To Pimp a Butterfly in there because they don't really work as a solo song. But when you consider the full project, it just works together so well and makes such a great experience. And so maybe a perfect album is more about the experience you get with it rather than, track by track experiences.
Yeah.
And how cohesive it is, yeah.
I think that with that you've got to look at sort of what the maybe artist is trying to go for, because they might not be trying to make something as grand as To Pimp a Butterfly, but then it could be like a collection of 10 like absolute bangers or something. Like an album that I've been really liking over the last couple of months is Are We Not Men by Devo. And that's just, the songs don't kind of like follow on from each other in any kind of way. The music style is similar, but that's the only kind of link between the songs. But they're all the songs are so good. So I don't know if I'd go as far as say it's perfect, but I'd say an album can be perfect even if the songs aren't necessarily all part of one overall experience. Like you can still listen to them individually, but I think it does help when it is part of the overall experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean. I think in that sort of sense, like Burial's Untrue, it's that same sort of thing though. Like it brings to you what you're expecting from it, and then it just keeps it at that level. And I think that was one thing that I sort of got. I was using To Be Kind as an example. Screenshot, the first track sort of builds up into this sort of really big, massive ending, and then the album just continues from that point. And so it's like, if you've got a perfect album, you don't really like, there's not sort of a plateau. You just sort of bring it on the first track and you keep it at that level. So the songs sort of sound the same in that sort of sense, but you alter it with each track and you bring that same, I don't know, just like greatness.
Another big kind of thing that comes down to it, I think, is preference as well. To give an example, one of my favourite jazz albums of all time is Muted Jazz by Jonah Jones, and that's purely because I have my favourite instrument, my favourite noise is a muted trumpet, and that album's all based around him playing a muted trumpet with all these old classic jazz songs. And is it a perfect album by any means? No, it's just a collection of jazz songs. There's no mental improv or anything like that, but I love a muted trumpet, so to me it's perfect because the whole album is just that noise. It's strange because there'll be people who consider any album to be perfect. I mean, that's why we have people around like, I don't know, Iggy Azalea. People find
she's just had a kid. She's had a kid. Leave her alone.
Oh, is she not on a target now? She's not
leave her alone. She's a mom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go on. I didn't like it. I didn't like it.
I heard it in an Instagram story and I was not feeling it.
I listened to like Drake's first bit and I was like, all right, okay, he's trying to do what Carti does and I'm kind of vibing. And then Carti came in and I was like, I'll leave that.
I think...
Well, I haven't really, but the XCX's track, Calm, is amazing. Oh no, not Calm, what's it called? Close. That track is amazing. I think that just came out today. But back. Oh, sorry. What was?
I was just thinking. Do you reckon there are people out there who consider an album to be perfect purely because it's experimental?
Possibly. I don't. You could say that. You could say it's in like it's going in a different direction. It's something that you haven't heard before. But I think I don't know. I think for me, if an album's experimental, or I don't know, I just feel like each album you've got like a path that you want to take with it, and it's just about like, I think a perfect album you can't go any direction, and you can't go past it, or I don't know, you can't surpass it. The only way you can make a better album is if you take another lane, if that makes sense.
I suppose a lot of people hold like, you know, albums that are considered sort of front runners for like their genres and stuff, like Loveless by My Bloody Valentine is like the like pinnacle of shoegaze music and the kind of like forward thinking album in that genre. So I think people can hold those kind of albums if they're to be considered experimental within their own genres and such. They can be held in quite high acclaim, and a lot of people will consider them to be perfect because of their like benchmark status. So I think I agree with you there. I think that there is some truth behind that, definitely.
Yeah, but this is what I mean when I say that. I think Supreme Butterfly, in that time frame, with the context that he gave the album, with what he wanted to do with it, I couldn't sort of see him doing better than what he did with it. Whereas you could sort of say Atrocity Exhibition was a better album than To Pimp a Butterfly because Danny Brown was going in a different direction. He was being more experimental. And so in that sort of sense, you can say it's preference. And then there's the argument that like there's no such thing as a perfect piece of music, but that's when subjectivity comes into it.
There'll never be a unanimous agreement on like a perfect album or the perfect album either, but it is all subjective. And I think like what you were saying about Twin Butterfly, like it probably couldn't have been better in the time frame and the context and what Kendrick Lamar wanted to actually achieve with it. I think Carrie and Lowell by Sufjan Stevens, I think as his sort of healing from and grievance period from his mother's death.
His mom.
I don't think that could have been a better. I consider that like a 10 out of 10 album, and I don't think that could have been improved given the circumstances, what he was going through, and what direction he wanted to take it in. So I think there can be. I don't think if you're looking at it from perfection, like could it be improved? I'm sure someone could find a way to have improved it, but in terms of, I think if you're defining perfection as being the best thing the artist was capable of at the time, then sure, perfect albums do exist, and we've all got examples of them. Haven't we? So,
do you reckon that there are people who consider an artist to have a perfect album, and then something happens to change their opinion on that? Like, do you reckon something an artist does can change someone's opinion on a perfect album? Let's say if there's people out there who consider My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy to be a perfect album, do you reckon there are people who stopped thinking that after the whole like Trump endorsement run and stuff like that?
I'm sure there probably was people who thought that.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. I think because it's strange, because perfect's such a big accolade to give to any piece of art or anyone's achievement. So I reckon there might be people who would strip that away as a kind of, I don't know, weird thing.
I think with the issue of separating art from artists, I think like with Kanye, for example, I think maybe if you're a bit dubious about what he's released since he's always been a bit controversial and questionable. But if sort of recent events have spurred you on to kind of not really be interested in him anymore, I think it would be daft to go back to an album like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy or The College Dropout or anything from previous while you were still a fan, and then be like, no, I don't like that now, because it's still, it's still the piece of art and music that it was for its time. And I think it would be a bit silly to go back and then just disassociate yourself from everything. Well, I didn't think Jesus is King was very good, so I don't really rate that one. So I kind of have dropped that one from my memory until now. But then I still rate all the other stuff before then.
Yeah. Life of Pablo is still in my top 10.
Yep.
It's got so many like amazing tracks. But I think with that, you could sort of ask the question, like, if an album is perfect, is it perfect for that time, or does the way it ages affect how perfect in a way it is?
Yeah, I think the case of a lot of old recordings, when they were recorded in mono, I reckon there's albums from that era when they come out, probably a lot of people consider to be a perfect album. But nowadays, if people go back and listen to them, or people afterwards listen to them, the idea of a mono recorded album being perfect might be quite strange, because they're used to having lavish full surround stereo production, and that could probably turn people off from an album, which kind of diminishes the amount of people that might say that album is perfect in today's day and age. Could be
perhaps. I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily essential for like an album to be like for its perfection to be determined by how well it ages, but I think it can add to it. Like Mezzanine by Massive Attack is one of my favorite albums, and it's still it's like over 20 years old now, and it still sounds so fresh and current. So I think that adds to its credibility. But even if it didn't age as well, I don't necessarily think it hugely detracts.
Yeah. Here's another point of people changing opinions. Do you reckon there's an artist that's released what people to consider to be a perfect album, and the artist releases an album afterwards that they might consider to be better, so then the previous album is no longer a perfect album?
I think an interesting example of that is Radiohead when because they dropped OK Computer, and he considered to be one of the most timeless albums, one of the most groundbreaking albums ever. And after that, they released Kid A, which is even more just sort of takes down that weird path, and they call it the greatest left turn in history. And so, me and Shaun were trying to do a write up for Radiohead recently, and I just sort of thought like, OK Computer sort of suffers from the direction that Kid A went in, and then Radiohead sort of went more down that avenue for like the rest of their career.
Yeah.
And so if you look at OK Computer from a Radiohead fan perspective, in my opinion, I don't see that as good an album as Kid A, or even potentially the more recent releases.
Agreed.
Because of what they've done afterwards.
Yeah, I consider it as a personal example to me. Like when we first did our top 10 stuff, I had Flower Boy in my top 10. And I said, jokingly, when we did the video, that Igor might kick it out, and it has. And I think, like, as an to use Tyler as an example, it's the idea that, like, the big buzz around Flower Boy that come from people outside of that already like tightly knit fan base of Tyler's was of the fact that it was growth as an artist, and what they saw as growth as a person. There was the production had grown massively. People were seeing a different side. And then to have the jump from that to Igor, I think was another thing that people were like, oh my God, what is this change? Why is it like this? And why is it so good? So it made the jump to what people consider to be a slightly experimental, like soul kind of jazz rap sample based album to this kind of synth in your face
pop
like funk record with rap also still in it. It was like seeing another creative leap, which I think me didn't diminish the leap that the previous album made, that Flower Boy made, but it seemed like such an artistic revelation that I just had to put that over Flower Boy in terms of my opinion on it.
Yeah.
It was just weird.
With oh, go on, Joe.
Oh, where are we going? If I ask the question, maybe does a perfect album matter more in terms of what the artist is doing, or more the critical acclaim and what people think of it? Ooh. Yeah. I think because I was gonna bring up as well. You have like those albums which are like classics that you sort of like have to listen to, in a sense, if you're sort of getting into music, like the beat, like maybe Abbey Road, Sgt. Pepper from the Beatles, or Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, or OK Computer. Like, do those sorts of albums carry the weight of a perfect album just because of the amount of hype they sort of get in general?
Again, it's just benchmarks, isn't it? Like benchmarks of their respective genres.
Yeah, I think with Dark Side of the Moon, it's an interesting case because that's probably the most popular album. Well, it's definitely the most popular album from Pink Floyd, but it's definitely by no means the best record. But it's the one that seems to get the most buzz and view. So, do you reckon there's people who listen to that?
I think a lot of those that are held in that claim, like Dark Side of the Moon, it's kind of, they all hit a really sweet spot of sort of pushing and breaking new ground and experimentation and accessibility. So it's kind of like, so it's kind of that point. If you were trying to get into like prog rock or something, you might listen to Wish You Were Here or Dark Side by Pink Floyd, or King Crimson or something like that, because it allowed it to then branch on. So it's kind of, they're perfect in the sense of how they could convince someone to like that whole genre or something. Maybe.
Do you reckon album art plays a part in it? Because when when albums are released, or when albums were released in the past, and we're born now, then we're going back and revisiting as like a onlooker of the album from that time. Like Dark Side of the Moon, the what's it called, the Rainbow Prism.
The Prism,
it's seen everywhere. So do you reckon that people will go back because they recognise the album art, because the album art's everywhere? It instills you with this thing to be like, this album's going to be one of the best albums I've ever heard, because it is like, that's an image that I've seen all around.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. I think, sorry, Alex, I think it's more about how, if it catches your eye, because I think when I was sort of trying to get into like listening to lots of different music and trying to expand my horizons, like it was the album arts that stuck to me first. And if I thought that, oh, this looks kind of interesting, then I'll just throw my head into it and see what it is and see why I see it so, or if I see it so often, then I'll jump into that. But yeah, I think
the album art and iconography and everything kind of it can either make or expand the kind of like legend status of an album, like Dark Side of the Moon. Everyone can recognize it immediately. You know, they'll know it from the album rather than like it in scientific purposes or whatever. So it is to do with that, like eye catching, and it should really encapsulate what the kind of sound of the album is. Like Loveless by My Bloody Valentine, could they have picked a better cover like that? Rashing like close up guitar shot, or like drowned in the pink filter. Like it doesn't tell you much about the album, but when you listen to it, you're like,
it matches. It
looks like what it sounds like.
Yeah. I was just thinking.
I agree.
Like the way that something draws you in, like as an example, like Kendrick's "To Pimp a Butterfly," it's an intriguing title with a very interesting album photo. Like to see all those people outside the White House. Like
I didn't even realize as well. He mentions that in Wesley's Theory. He says he'll put all his homies in front of the White House or something, and that hit me as well.
It's just the way that like a perfect album really should be the whole package.
Yeah, I think that was something that I saw. It was like just sort of something that I came to the conclusion of, that like in every sense, the album should just be tightly packed. Sort of furthering on what I said about how you can't go further down that lane. So the way it all comes together just really well. So every part of it plays a role, and I think that's a good point there, Mickey, with the album cover.
Do you reckon if "To Pimp a Butterfly" was just called, let's say as an example, looking around my room, it was just called Iron Brew, and then the album art was just a picture of an Iron Brew bottle, would it really get the...
Ooh.
Yeah.
What?
You know what? I'll upload it. I'll upload all of "To Pimp a Butterfly," except it will be Iron Brew by Iron Brew and a picture of Iron Brew, and I'll see how many people listen to it.
Read up all the lyrics in a Scottish accent instead. Yeah. Really drive it home.
No, yeah, and all the instrumentals are just like beer cans and bottles just hit it. Yeah.
Imagine the Wesley's Theory, like when the actual beat kicks in and everything, with bagpipes instead. Classic incoming.
No, they're like nostalgia critics, The Wall, but just worse.
No,
I didn't even listen to that. I don't want to.
I saw a snippet of it, and it was like 240p footage. It seemed it was proper dusty, and it was just him recreating on a green screen like bits from The Wall,
from the
music video or something like that. It was something shit, and I was just like, I vowed to never ever encounter this in my life again. It was awful. No, don't.
That's something I could, if an album is a concept album or draws from a concept, does that automatically sort of give it more room to become a perfect album, would you say?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I think like if your concept's bad to begin with, and the chances of making a perfect album is terrible. But if you have a fantastic concept, the chances of you making potentially a middling album in terms of instrumentation, the actual vocals, everything as a package, but it has an excellent concept, you have the chance of people going, that album is perfect. But if you have amazing, it's like the amazing package with a good, like with an amazing concept, that's the sweet ticket. But it's very easier to make a well-regarded album with a good concept than make a well-regarded album with a bad concept.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to like what artists want to sort of actually achieve with the album, because you know, like obviously we keep using the example to Pimp a Butterfly, but it's a good one. So like, you know, there was obviously something that Kendrick Lamar wanted to achieve with the album. Had he gone into it kind of blind but had these ideas for music, it wouldn't be as actualized or as well regarded as it is now. So I do think that if you have, like, it's like what you said, Mickey, that if you have the good idea already, it kind of bolsters your actual chances of making something so well regarded. But it's still possible to not have a concept, just make a collection of banging tunes and, you know, have a classic on your hands. It's possible either way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good collection of songs.
Yeah. There are
you can say that.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
Okay, go on.
I was going to say, like, in a similar vein, there's albums that scratch itches that only you as a person can really have. And it may possibly be what people consider to be the worst abhorrent album to ever be made. But if it scratches that itch,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, to add to that point as well, you could say that a lot of Death Grip stuff sort of has that sort of, like, obviously there's no sort of storyline, but they just go all balls to the wall, do whatever the hell they want, and I think that sort of gains them that notoriety where you could call maybe a Bottomless Pit or a N-Words on the Moon or a The Money Store or an Ex-Military a perfect album, because all of them go down the same I don't know, the same sort of pathway, do exactly what they want to do. And that's what this is why we're recording in a studio. And that's why they're so good, because they just do what the band wanted to do, and they appeal to such a quite a dedicated fan base.
They'll throw a curveball at you as well, like, because you don't really know what's going to happen with them. They're all quite unpredictable. So I think that constant sort of consistent unpredictability is kind of what is part of their appeal as well, and why they're highly regarded as well.
Do you reckon an album with intentionally lo-fi quality to it, like terms of things that maybe, even though the initial recording of it may be quite bad, like the sounds just, they've not attempted to fix a sample or a sound that they've used, and it's an intentional thing. Do you reckon, though, like, even though they may not musically in terms be perfect, but in terms of an album as a whole, it can still be considered perfect because it's been used within the context of an album?
Yeah. I think an example that I'd use for that, I've got two, to be fair, is some rap songs by Earl Sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Because I can see he had a vision with that, and he just sort of said what was on his mind and sort of dove deep into, you know, his sort of thoughts and everything, and just laid them all out on a record with this sort of really bad mixing and these really weird and eerie beats, and just sort of said his piece. And then, I don't know, but like the fact that he did say his piece and what he said and the way something's really bad and he's done it on purpose, you sort of like see what he wanted you to see, like the lyrics of it. And the other example I was going to say was The Glow Part 2 by The Microphones, which is still one of my favourite albums, because it is so lo-fi and it gets so distorted at points, but it's all to do with the context of the album and how sort of shit Phil Elvum's feeling after his breakup, sort of just highlighting on that, and just sort of it's a good representation of how he feels with the album, what he wants to do with it, and where he wants to go, and what he's sort of I don't know, what he's sort of representing in the album.
I remember when I was first sort of branching out music tastes from being a bit fed up of just listening to like Oasis and Nirvana. And so
we've all been there.
Yeah. But when I was trying to branch out more stuff, when I was like 15 or something, I think that was when I discovered Ween. And because I loved Ocean Man, like everyone does, I was like, I'll go through their albums like in order because they've probably got more stuff like this. And I put the first one, and it's this like insane lo-fi, just like screaming, and I was like, what the hell is this? I was very not prepared for what that actually brought. But then I think you can find like a lot of charm in that lo-fi early version of their stuff. And I mean, like, I think I'm a bigger Ween fan than quite a lot of people now. So they're part of me.
With you forever. Yeah,
I do think there's a lot of merit in lo-fi stuff. Like, you don't have to have the best recordings equipment. If you've got an idea, you're good at your instrument, and you know there's something to do with it, then you can definitely achieve greatness, if not perfection, through lo-fi means or anything.
Fair enough.
It's preventing it from being perfect. That prevents it from being listenable. That's like that's so far from perfect already. Yeah.
Please, K-pop fans, don't hurt us. I don't share these views.
We've set ourselves up to be murdered by 13-year-old girls across the world now.
Yeah. It's alright though. BTS are kind of cool.
Is not an ally of K-pop.
Josh Madden's dream.
Although if BTS want to say something, then I don't mind.
Yeah. On the podcast.
I don't. We'll resist the hate if it's BTS, because I know if we do get hate from someone as big as BTS, it's just not going to matter anyway. It's going to be funny.
I think one thing that may make an album hold back an album from being perfect could just be something as simple as like I find myself listening to songs that I initially find really good, and then after I start picking apart the mixing and the beat and the production, sometimes there's one little song, like one little sound in the song, and it really like just niggles me when I hear it, and it just gets on like it every time it comes in. I'm like, oh, that noise just ruins it. Like. And then it takes me ages to just kind of remove myself from that noise, but I can't help it sometimes. I try and go too deep into the beat, and the next thing you know, I'm like, why does it sound like forks being pushed against each other? Like, oh yeah,
oh
yeah.
I'm trying to think of what I think. Like you say, like if there's like a production error, like and you couldn't see past it, or even still, if there's just like, I think a perfect album has got to be that. It's got to be perfect. Like there's got to be like no faults in it. So I don't know. I think it take like the smallest thing that would just like knock it off. Yeah. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. Like you said to begin with, Alex. Like the replay value of it. Like I can sort of sit there and say that one album's. I could see why people would think it's perfect, but I haven't. I listened to it once and was like, all right, I can't see myself coming back to it really, but I can sort of see why. So I feel like that's quite a big sort of thing. I don't know. That's quite a good question.
I think with the like one thing kind of taken away from it, there's a bit. Do you know? It's One of My Turns on the Wall.
Yeah.
That bit. because it starts out with a conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That one bit where the woman goes, "Wanna take a bath?" That bit, it just grates on me so much. Like, the rest of that song is so good, but it's that one bit, and I dread it every time. But yeah.
Yeah, do you reckon there's one word within a song or an album, like one like lyric, one bar in a song or an album that can really cause like an immense hatred of it? Like, let's say, as a hypothetical, let's say Revival, when it came out, everything in that album was perfect. It was what everyone wanted.
Absolutely.
And then there was that, and then the only thing that didn't change is the like your booty heavy duty like diarrhea line or whatever it is. That line stayed in. Do you reckon that line could cause that album not like achieving critical reception
that it deserves?
Yeah.
Well, I think the example I'd use there is Life of Pablo, Father Stretch My Hands Part 1.
Yeah, that makes it better.
I think as when Kanye said something like that, like I saw in a couple of interviews, because he said something on I Am a God on Jesus, where he said in the French ass restaurant, hurry up my damn croissants. And it's like, and he just sort of said that like he doesn't really care if he's going to get hate on that line, because regardless of if you hate it or if you just think it's funny or if you love it for some reason, like you're going to remember that line. That line's going to stick with you. And so in that sort of sense, it's like not necessarily creating something either good or bad, but just creating something that's going to stick with you.
I don't think I necessarily get the feeling that I do when I listen to Father Stretch My Hands Part 1, where, with that amazing intro.
And the Kid Cudi vocals, and then just that.
Yeah, I think just the complete antithesis of each other. I don't think I'd get the same feeling of listening to that if there was a different, more tame lyric. I think just the whole thing just is perfect. So you got beautiful gospel like kind of sampling and just
choir,
like choir vocal, and then you got that following it. It's just so funny, but in a way it works because it kind of represents Kanye in a very stupid way. I mean that's the problem with like why Eminem's still seen as to many people as being being corny. It's because he's just a corny man. He's been that for ages. It's just like it works with him as a person to an extent until he says that booty heavy duty line. There's limits, but do you reckon there's somebody can, like an artist can say something so left field and out of like what seems to be their kind of wheelhouse as a person, like it's so wrong to hear them say it because it's nothing like them, that somebody could be like, no, I'm out. That's it. Like, why did they have to come in and do that?
Like, that's an interesting one.
Because even though the If I Flip This Model line's really shit, it's one of the worst rap lyrics probably ever to be written. It works because it's Kanye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a stupid, silly way.
And
yeah.
Morrissey.
Hobson.
Logic.
But I think that's it, because they're sort of guys that want to be taken seriously so bad, but with the stuff that they say, and you can tell that they're being genuine with it, but because of what they're saying, people just don't listen, or people just blank them out anyway.
Well, Kanye's taking the piss with it. Like, he's saying things just because he just wants to. Like, that's the kind of guy he is. But then, like, serious, like, lyrical rappers, Eminem,
individual criminal.
Individual, spiritual, lyrical, miracle, individual. Like Hobson and Logic and what's he called? J. Cole. Like people. I mean, J. Cole's held probably in a bit of higher regard than those are the guys, I reckon, because people like Hobson and Logic, no one takes them seriously.
Yeah. J. Cole are the opposite kind of to their careers. Like Eminem's, I think, thankfully coming back maybe on an upward slope, but
I think Eminem. Sorry,
I was just saying, if it's like with J. Cole, he started as being a corny pop rapper and then turned into maybe a bit spiritual, miracle, lyrical, but he's he came from being what a lot of people consider to be abhorrent to being what only a few people might consider to be bad. Whereas it's like Hobson, even though Hobson started as being a spiritual movement, it was like, oh wow, like this is someone trying to do real rap, because that's what everyone felt like at the time, because people were stupid, didn't know what to say back then. Yeah, but like, I mean, like
he's the truest rapper. Him and Dax.
He come out at a perfect time when everybody was like at a point where like, I can't be honest with this mumble rap or whatever, or this kind of blinger rap, or no more Lil Wayne. Let me listen to Hobson, and then you
bring back real rap,
and then you're like, oh no, actually I was wrong. Forgive me, Lord.
I think Eminem's just sort of got to a point in his career where he's either sort of admirable by either 40-year-olds who grew up on his music or 12-year-olds who just think that it's super duper cool and just sort of haven't really like broadened the horizons and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like one of the reasons why I was thinking about this as well was if you saw Shaun C's video on J. Cole and his Perfect Album, and I saw that like a lot of his albums, once he sort of got past that corny rap stage, that sort of pop rap thing that he was trying to do, and he did Forest Hills Drive, For Your Eyes Only, and KOD, which all came across as like really conscious sort of album releases, and sort of him trying to make a message, him trying to create a T-Pab in that sort of sense. But what he did that what he didn't do that Kendrick sort of did was that he didn't stick to one thing. Kendrick just sort of had a vision with it and just went down that road, whereas J. Cole, like, he's sort of rapping about how he wants to get out of his hood and he wants to do this for his family and sort of like the neighborhood that he grew up in. But at the same time, he's talking about weddings with this girl. And then there's like No Role Models, which is a banging song. But in context of the album, there's like nothing really there. Yeah. And like he just goes on too many different tangents, like folding clothes on For Your Eyes Only. And it's like,
I think the perfect J. Cole album would be an album that
sort of do that, but
the perfect J. Cole album would be an album that is J. Cole's album, except every song is by a different artist and it says featuring J. Cole.
J. Cole, yeah.
Because he went on an absolute feature killing spree. And if he wants to do an album like that, then please.
Wild.
He is just a pound Kendrick, though, isn't he?
Yeah. No,
I think it's unfortunate. So. I think he got pipped at the post anyway by like a Good Kid, Mad City, and then Kendrick comes through with To Pimp a Butterfly, and then that's J. Cole even more is considered being just kind of
Kendrick, just buried in the dirt. But at the same time, I think that. Sorry, I was going to say that basically after, because like To Pimp a Butterfly was like the be all and end all of my music listening experience between the ages of like 15 and maybe 17. And like that was the bit that literally it was just like T-Pab and then just anything rap that I could find. And but like I'm looking at it like outside of T-Pab, I can't like Good Kid, Mad City and Section 80 are great in the fact that they sort of keep on with the storyline, or like they're really good to Pimp a Butterfly, but I can't see Kendrick Lamar doing any better than To Pimp a Butterfly because it was, in a sense, all perfect. Like I don't think Damn's nowhere near on that level that even Section 80 or Good Kid, Mad City are on. Which is So maybe if there's the question of if an artist is somehow able to create a perfect album, where do they go from there?
I was about to ask that as well. I was thinking like. It could a perfect album for an artist to be the end of the career.
I think,
like not the end, like straight up, but the downward trajectory.
Yeah, I think it was when Fantano reviewed "You Know What I'm Saying" by Danny Brown, and he just sort of referenced the last release, and he was just saying that like he can't really see Danny Brown better in this point. And which sort of brings in the sort of mindset that if you do create a perfect album, then you've got to create, and you want to sort of surpass it, you've got to create a perfect album in a different lane and doing different things. So,
I'm excited to see what Danny Brown does.
Strike gold twice in the same place, are you? Well, it's pretty hard to do. It's like what Radiohead did. Everyone said that OK Computer was like pinnacle of the genre, and they did something completely different that, in my opinion, was better. So I think it's possible, but you've got to sort of reinvent the wheel in your own kind of field. So it's possible, but difficult, and not many people pull it off. Yeah.
Well, I think we'll leave it there then. I think we got over quite a few good points with that.
Nice one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. This was quite fun. I think
I'm giving it the again, boys. Seal of approval. See you next week / half year.
See you in the next 6 months with the next episode. Thanks for listening, guys. Follow us on Instagram.
Thank you for having me.
Put everything in the description.
I forgot to plug.
April Jams.
I forgot to plug. We actually have an official band person in our midst now.
We do. We have an artiste.
We have an actual person who can actually be considered as able to talk on music. So give us some credibility. Shaun, Chihuahuas, you know how to plug away.
Yeah. Chihuahua Band on Instagram. Give it a follow. New music next week. Thank you.
Oh, exciting! Yes, all right, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Yes, bye.